news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 8th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now with some light snow, it's -7 in Ottawa, -8 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. As the city tries to deal with the downtown occupation and calls on the federal and provincial governments for help, that includes enough police to double the size of the Ottawa force, at least for the duration of the protest. There has also been an emotional plea from one of the downtown city councillors, Catherine McKinney, calling on police to do more to protect the residents. Here's City News reporter Jason White.
The councillor says the problem is convoy supporters wandering through residential neighbourhoods around the downtown. And Somerset councillor Catherine McKinney adds with nary a police officer to be seen once you leave the occupied zone.
I was more frightened walking home than I was on Kent, in the middle of it, speaking to them.
Council approved McKinney's request to ask the federal government to be responsible for public safety in the parliamentary precinct, freeing up Ottawa police officers. Meantime, Chief Peter Slowly says as his officers try to cut off fuel to the hill, the convoy is targeting police supply chains.
That is now being undermined by protesters or people affiliated with protesters to stop their business from supplying the needed equipment that we have for our core operations.
The mayor's now requested an extra 1,800 police officers and support staff from the provincial and federal governments. Jason White, City News.
City News time, 9:01. Now, a significant majority of Ottawa residents are opposed to this convoy demonstration. Here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
In a poll of 500 Ottawa residents covering the entire city, polling firm Abacus Data found that 34% support the demonstrators' call to end COVID-19 related health measures. 17% of those are strongly supportive, while 66% or 2/3 are opposed. When asked if the protesters have made their point and it's time to leave town, 87% said yes. Views on the Prime Minister and Doug Ford mostly negative. The Ottawa Police Service response quite divided, with 3 in 10 saying they've done well, but 4 in 10 saying they've done poorly. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 9:02. And now your forecast. Here's City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A cloudy day, some flurries at times, the high -1, but that's above average. The average high is about -5, -13 for the low, partly cloudy tonight and tomorrow. Flurries at times in the morning, steadier snow for the afternoon. Could collect a couple of centimeters for tomorrow afternoon, the high near 0. For today, the high -1.
And right now, with some light snow, it's -7 in Ottawa, -8 degrees in Smiths Falls. Ontario's Housing Affordability Task Force has a report out today. It's recommending the goal of building 1.5 million homes province-wide in the next 10 years. The government-appointed task force says house prices in Ontario have nearly tripled in the past decade, far outpacing income growth, and a lack of supply is one of the key issues. Many of the 55 recommendations suggest ways to limit development being stifled by local opposition to some housing projects. The Power of the Dog. That leads the Oscar field with 12 nominations this year, followed by Dune with 10. Montreal's Denis Villeneuve has scored an Oscar nod for Best Adapted Screenplay for Dune. The writer-director has said the novel played a key role in his youth. He devoured sci-fi comics. Meanwhile, Canadian costume designer Louis Seguera has snagged an Oscar nod for Nightmare Alley. Nominations were announced this morning and include the National Film Board co-production, Affair of the Art, for Best Animated Short. The 94th Annual Academy Awards will air on March 27th. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Say X,
he's got the Y.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I hope everyone living in the downtown core had a good night's sleep last night. You deserved it. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Going to be another very busy news day, and we're always so pleased when you decide to spend part of your day with us. My opening remarks will be brief this morning. because we have a lot to get to coming right up. It's the Mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson, on everything that's been happening in the last dozen days or so, in the last 24 hours, what may happen next, what the mayor hopes will happen next. I spoke with the mayor about a half an hour ago, covered a lot of ground. Everything from what went down at yesterday's council meeting, the request for a substantial increase in the number of police to try and get things under control, or as the Globe and Mail screams on its front page this morning, Ottawa mayor wants more help to, quote unquote, take back the streets. Take back the streets. Request for almost 2,000 new police officers and civilian support. So the mayor's going to walk us through what's involved with that request. He's been clear since all of this began that he can't and won't direct the police on any kind of operational level. You know, there's supposed to be this kind of separation, if you will, between politicians and the police. But we also had to get into the response from the Ottawa police, don't we? That I think a growing number of people in the Ottawa area, they find the police response to be wanting. I get the sense that the mood is the police have mishandled this whole business pretty much from the get-go. And I asked the mayor about that. You can hear his answer in just a few minutes' time. Why hasn't the city asked for an injunction? That's a suggestion that's been out there for the better part of a week now. Why was it up to a local law firm working on behalf of a local 21-year-old to go to court and seek an injunction? Why didn't the city do that? What's the city's next move here? How does this come to an end? We covered it all. It's coming up in just a few minutes' time. The Ottawa Mayor, Jim Watson. And then it's the professor right after that. How about that? His weekly appearance, Professor Ian Lee, Associate Professor of Management, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. And as usual, he's wound up, well-caffeinated, and ready to unleash his opinions on the people of Ottawa. He has a lot to say about everything that's been happening in the capital city over the last week and a half. And we also have to get into the politics of it all, right? You have the conservative leadership race with Pierre Poilievre declaring, I'm in, the obvious frontrunner right now, you would think. But other names are in the mix, like Tasha Karadan. She is a well-known political commentator, newspaper columnist. Says she's been approached about making a run for the leadership, and she's thinking about it. And on the Liberal side, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, gave a speech in the House of Commons yesterday, inside the actual physical House of Commons. A very rare sight these days. Emerging from his COVID quarantine, just as so many were wondering, hey, where's the Prime Minister? What's with the Disappearing Act? We have protests all over the country now. So I think he had a lot on the line yesterday. Meantime, you have Mark Carney's writing op-eds in the Globe and Mail. So once again, we're leading to all sorts of speculation that Mark Carney wants to take a run at the Liberal leadership if that job ever becomes available. And there's always Chrystia Freeland, the Minister of Everything, waiting in the wings. So, like yesterday, I'm going to get into the many political layers of the story. And we'll also do that with my friend on the right side of things, Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, speechwriter, had a column in the National Post recently, thrilled that Pierre Poilievre is running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. One of the questions that's already being asked is it going to be a coronation or is it actually going to be a race? And can anyone seriously challenge Poilievre? Or does he already have this thing locked up? And we will do the Talkback Hour this morning. We do it every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock on the Rob Snow Show. An hour of opinion, an hour of phone calls. Hottest hour of talk radio in town, just ask around. And this morning, we're going to talk about pandemic health restrictions, mask mandates, vaccine passports, travel restrictions, capacity limits for businesses, all of these things that we have endured for 23 months. Everything that we have been doing in the name of public health. I've been doing my part. David's been doing his part. Everyone we know has been doing their part. What if it all ended? What if it all ended? Not because there was this protest, but just it was time to end it. What if it all ended today or tomorrow or this weekend in time for, Super Bowl Sunday? What would happen? Would people just throw caution to the wind? Or would people still be cautious? Still wear masks, go for boosters if it's time for a booster, keep their distance, limit their contacts, stay home when they're sick, these kinds of things. See, I've been trying to reconcile these two things. The idea of ending pandemic restrictions, I don't think that's too far outside the mainstream. I think, actually, it is the mainstream. And there is public opinion research from a very reputable organization, the Angus Reid Institute, that says that's the majority opinion in Canada, that 54% of Canadians think it's time to end pandemic-related health restrictions. But at the same time, there's also public opinion research that says we don't see ourselves when we look at the convoy protesters. And we don't like how they're going about things and how they've been behaving at all. Even though we may want the same things. So I've been thinking about this. Because I sure as heck have not liked a lot of the things that I have seen happen in our city over the last week and a half. I think uncertainty still fills the air. But I'd love my old life back. Do you think ending pandemic-related health restrictions, do you think that's a radical idea? They've done it in other countries, Western European countries, Nordic countries, UK, Sweden, Norway, Denmark. Some of these countries, they're governed by center-left parties. It's not like it's Florida or Texas. It's not the hard right. They're social democratic governments. And they've done it. No masks, no capacity limits on businesses, no vaccine passports, got rid of it all. They're learning to live with it. And some of our medical officials in this country say it's time we did the same. So let's talk about that this morning on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
We have much to discuss with the Mayor of Ottawa this morning. Back on City News, Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
So, emergency city council meeting yesterday. Many motions up for discussion and a vote. So what occurred as a result of all of those motions yesterday, Mr. Mayor? What are some of the highlights, the takeaways?
Well, a couple of things. First and foremost was our formal request to both the province and the federal government for additional police resources totaling 1,800. That would be 1,000 officers, 600 public crowding, officers for crowd control, 100 investigative officers, and 100 civilian staff for a total of 1,800 that we see as split three ways between outside municipal forces in the province of Ontario, and they've been very helpful. So far, we've had people from Hamilton, London, Peel, Toronto, and so on, and a third of those from the OPP and a third from the RCMP. So that letter went out yesterday to the Prime Minister, as well as to the Premier and their two public safety ministers, or Solicitor General in the case of Ontario, and public safety in the case of the federal government.
Okay, so what do you see those officers doing? Give us an idea of what do you want them to do. I mean, the front page of the Globe and Mail says the Ottawa Mayor wants to take the streets back. Quote, to take the streets back. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, a couple of things. Obviously, I'm not giving advice or direction to the chief of police. They have that expertise. But my understanding from discussions with the chief and his command is that, first of all, our officers are exhausted. They've been working 14 days in a row, no breaks, miserable weather, frigid temperatures. They need some relief, but we also need more boots on the ground because this is almost like a game of whack-a-mole. You shut down one depot here that's providing fuel, something comes up somewhere else, and you have to keep moving resources around. And unless we can contain these areas that we've freed up, a good example is that shack that was along the canal near the Confederation Park, in Confederation Park. They got that all cleaned up, got the shack moved, and then they fenced it in so people couldn't go back again. So that is the kind of thing that we need to be much more proactive. And, people are still carrying in cans. Now, some of them are water. I saw people on TV drinking out of the cans, so it's obviously not gasoline, but I'm sure some are gasoline as well. So we have to cut off that supply of diesel fuel and propane and other dangerous substances, quite frankly, not just to try to get them to move their vehicles, but, God help us if there's an explosion with all these propane tanks and diesel, jerry cans, so on, next to wooden shacks and the like.
Okay, so this contingent of 1,800 police and civilian support, what's something like that cost? Well, and who's going to pay for it?
Well, we have to pay the municipal police force's costs because they come in and they need hotels, meal allowances, and so on. But we've let the province and the federal government know, and they've been very receptive, that we're keeping an exact accounting of all of these costs, and they'll be sent to the provincial and federal governments because this is not our battle, but it's taking place in our hometown, and property taxpayers should not be paying for this fight between the federal, provincial governments and the truckers. So, it is expensive, but it's needed. We need to get greater police presence so that we can end this sooner and peacefully rather than later and with violence.
What is your understanding as to how many OPP officers have been in support of the Ottawa police force? There seems to be some dispute between what the province says it is and what the city says it is. So.
Yeah, I think the minister, if I'm not mistaken, clarified. I think she was counting, 100 each day counts as another officer. I'm not quite sure, but our staff tell me it was 100 OPP officers, and I see OPP officers in the downtown core, so they're there, and we very much appreciate them. But we need a significant boost in numbers in order to enforce the law. We're ticketing more than we ever had before, 1,000 tickets in the last couple of days. We've applied to increase the idling bylaw and the noise bylaw to $1,000, so that's going to hit people in the pocket very quickly. And we believe that we'll get that permission from the Chief Justice later this week.
Okay. I don't have to tell you, I'm sure you've heard it. Some people say the leadership of the Ottawa Police Force during this crisis has not been up to the standard that they would expect. And some go so far as to say that Chief Slowly should be replaced. Do you still have confidence in your Chief of Police?
I do, Rob. I have
Why?
in the Chief, as well as the women and men in uniform of the Ottawa Police Service. We had our big city mayors caucus Zoom call yesterday with the mayors from the 25 largest cities in Canada. And even though it wasn't on the agenda, they wanted to talk about our experience. And people like John Tory said, we learned from Ottawa because they came there first, and we learned some of the tricks of the trade that the truckers were engaged in, and that helped them to bring closure to their protests after just a day or two in Quebec City.
Right, so they learned from all the mistakes that were made in Ottawa,
well,
you could say.
Look, this was, I think we're going to do a postmortem. One of the suggestions from Councillors Tierney and Hubley was to do a full independent postmortem on what went well and what didn't go so well. Obviously, a lot didn't go well because we just didn't have the intelligence that said that they were going to stay here. There was the understanding and the advocacy by these groups. They were coming, protesting, having a rally on the Hill, and then going back to the west. That obviously didn't happen. Many of them did leave, but a core of them, a hardened core, stayed behind. And, I have lots of input I wanted to hand into that inquiry that's going to look at exactly why we were not better prepared. Why didn't we cut off access sooner, and why wasn't there greater coordination in terms of the 417 and off-ramps and so on. So, that's great to deal with that, but the priority now is to get them out of our downtown because they're causing havoc and creating such hardship for people who are just not able to get a night's sleep. Now, we appreciate the court decision yesterday, the injunction that has told the drivers they can't honk their horns for the next 10 days. And I'm told, even though I live in the West End, I've been downtown today, I'm told that the horns are not honking, or if they are, it's one or two honks.
Yeah, there's a lot of relief in the core. But to your point, I mean, it was no secret that the convoy was coming to Ottawa. It was on the news every night for a week. And I don't think it was any secret that some of them said, we're not going to leave until our demands are met. So a lot of people are wondering, why wasn't the city better prepared for the arrival of this convoy? Because 12 days later, it seems like it was a massive mistake that we just kind of invited them right in. You mentioned the Toronto and Quebec City protests. They were one-day wonders, Mr. Mayor. So.
Well, Quebec was 4 days. Alberta is coming on 2 weeks as well. But the bottom line is that's why I supported the resolution from Councillors Hubley and Tierney. We have to get to the bottom of this, not only because the residents deserve an answer as to why things did not go well. We have to find out, how do we avoid having this happen again, leading up, for instance, to Canada Day. We can't have this repeat itself. It's devastating to the community, to the small businesses that are suffering. The Rideau Centre closed for almost 2 weeks. Just the sheer cost of these closures. I'm in my discussions with federal and provincial ministers, I've made it very clear we are, for all intents purposes, in an unofficial lockdown. We talk about lockdowns by the province and so on. We got out of the lockdown 2 Mondays ago so restaurants could open, but we're now in a lockdown caused by the truckers in the convoy. And those people who would normally benefit from CERB and other wage supplements need to have access to those dollars because they can't go to work. They're in a lockdown imposed by these individuals who have come to cause such havoc in our community, and they need our help because they're suffering and hovering on the poverty line.
Okay. Longer term, there will come a day when this too shall pass. Longer term, what do you think as the mayor of the capital city about getting vehicle traffic off Wellington Street for good and turning that into some kind of pedestrian mall?
Yeah, I think that's a realistic option. I think, what may cause the closure for cars is that is the proposed or the preferred route for the Gatineau tram system to come over the Portage Bridge onto Wellington and reverse back and go back to Hull or Gatineau. Once it's basically let people off at the corner of Elgin and Wellington. So I think there was someone that wrote a column about that, if I'm not mistaken, that said that basically the solution will be the tram because it will not allow cars to intermingle with the train.
You see that as viable, then? It's viable. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The studies have been done, and
all right.
The city of Ottawa has given its permission. There was either a tunnel under Sparks or Wellington, and the Gatineau Council preferred Wellington for a couple of reasons, including cost.
Okay.
Much cheaper surface than going underground.
All right, this is kind of inside baseball, but some of your council colleagues think committee business should be suspended because the downtown councillors are swamped dealing with the convoy protest. Why not do that?
Well, I don't want to give in to these convoy people who have taken our city hostage. You know, they were quite happy to shut down the streets. They wanted to shut down Parliament. And the last thing we should give to them is shutting down our business at the city. The city continues to function and providing as many services as we can. We had examples. Eli El-Shantiri said we didn't shut down city business during the flooding, in 2017, 2019. He said we didn't do it during the tornado. So we have to continue working to get things done. We have the Civic Hospital proposal that's before planning committee this week. Delaying that, the hospital tells us by a month would cost $9 to $11 million. So we have a lot on our plate above and beyond our priority of getting rid of the convoy and continuing to remind ourselves we're in a pandemic, and that's not going away. We have to keep the wheels of government going. And I said this would just be a great win for these people out on Wellington Street. Say, look what we've done. We've now shut down City Hall. So it failed. The motion failed. I understand there's a lot of stress on particularly councillors McKinney and Fleury. They have the brunt of the protests in their neighborhoods. And that's why we are pushing very hard to get more resources from the federal and provincial governments for policing so that we can get more police officers in the residential neighborhoods to give some peace of mind and security to those people who have been harassed for 2 weeks. Centertown, Lower Town, and Byward Market, getting many, many more police officers and a greater presence in those neighborhoods as quickly as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All the best.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Take care. Bye-bye.
There's
and the Valley. This City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 8th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now is some light snow. It's -6 in Ottawa, -7 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson says he is waiting for 1,800 more officers and civilians to be approved for deployment to Ottawa to help deal with the occupation downtown. Watson says once they are here, they will help Ottawa police, who are exhausted. He likened the police strategy against the protesters as whack-a-mole. As soon as police close down one protest staging point, for example, another one springs up. The mayor also says he does have confidence in the police chief, despite criticism of the way Chief Slowly and his senior leadership has handled the protest to date. Opposition leader in the province, Andrea Horwath, and Ottawa Centre NDP MPP Joel Harden holding a joint media briefing this hour. They're calling on the Premier to do his part under legislation to get this situation in Ottawa under control. Another relatively short trucker protest by comparison, the Ambassador Bridge border crossing between Windsor and Detroit, has reopened now to U.S.-bound traffic. An anti-vaccine mandate demonstration blocked traffic in both directions just last night. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
And he's back, the poor professor from the Glebe. Ian Lee from the Sprott School at Carleton University. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Well, let's just jump right into it here. We're 12 days into this protest here, the Freedom Convoy demonstration. So I would like to get your assessment, if you will. You're used to grading people, so as a professor. So what kind of grade would you give the mayor, for example, on his handling?
Let me put it this way. And first off, I want everyone to know I don't have any dog in this hunt. I do not belong to any political party. I don't donate money to any political party, and I do not allow lawn signs in any federal or provincial or municipal campaign because I want to stay neutral because I'm commenting on these things. So and I'm not getting into, who said what to whom and whether there was or wasn't vandalizing going on or swastikas or threats. I'm not dealing with that at all. What I'm doing is stepping back and saying, okay, wait, this has been going on for 2 weeks. Is there a narrative, a meaning coming into focus? Can we see trends in the data? And all the data of everything that's happening and being reported. And I do think that it is crystallizing and becoming apparent, at least to me, and people can disagree, and that's fine. But I think that there are three losers that are, each day goes by, the losers are becoming more and more transparent. And then I'll move on to the winners, because I do think there's three winners. And I'm not doing that just to have symmetry, but I see three major losers in this set of events, and I see three serious winners with different levels of winning. So the big three losers, and I don't think it's any shock or surprise, it's Mr. Trudeau. He's the Prime Minister. I'm not picking on Justin Trudeau. He is the Prime Minister of Canada. And the protesters came to Ottawa, the capital of Canada, to protest the policies of the government of Canada. So we can't say, well, he's not really involved in this, just because it's on the ground in the city. And he has been, I believe, so badly damaged by the process, by the protests, that he's literally gone underground. I mean, if you want to use some sort of slang, colorful English, he's been hiding under his child's bed in the child's bedroom. Because he
was in the House yesterday. He was in the House of Commons
for the first time. He senses that what he was saying over the last 2 weeks was not helping himself or the management of the protest. And I'll get into it afterwards why I think that happened. So that's the first one. This is the largest and most sustained process in my lifetime in modern Canadian history. If you want to get intellectual and say, was there ever a bigger protest in the entire history of Canada? The only thing I learned was the 1919 Winnipeg General Strike, which was a very, very violent strike. The army was sent in, and I'm not trying to draw parallels. It was 100 years ago. But there's all these no two protests were so big and received so much publicity and so much coverage. And he has been managing this by wide accounts on op-eds and talk shows and so forth, that he has completely botched it, and that's why he's gone underground. The second major loser is Mayor Watson, who has been paralyzed throughout this process and just simply doesn't recognize, not because of malevolence, it's because he just don't know what to do. And so he has in this process, we know he's first off underreacted, then he overreacts, then he underreacts, and he's just going round and round in circles. And so that was the second loser in this, and then the third loser is the chief of police in Ottawa, who gave that extraordinary interview yesterday where he was whining about how he and his policemen are victims. The policemen responsible for law and order are victims. Isn't that amazing? Really. And again, I don't know the person. I've never met him. So there's I think the three big...
Yeah, we have a clip of Chief Slowly. Let's play this. This is from yesterday. Ottawa Police Chief Peter Slowly.
We are asking for an additional 1,800 police and civilian personnel. 1,800 police and civilian personnel. To put that into some perspective, the entire amount of members of the Ottawa Police Service is 2,100. The entire amount of police officers in the Ottawa Police Service is 1,200. We are asking for 1,800 police and civilian resources for our immediate use within our incident command umbrella.
All right. That was the chief yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've known, because it's been commented on so that both the mayor and the chief of police botched the preparation. When the protesters were saying, we're coming to Ottawa with our trucks and we're staying to protest, they did no preparation whatsoever. I'm not going to rehash why I've given this judgment.
Yeah.
There's just so much evidence on the record, and I'm going to run out of time. Okay. So I don't want to get into, the why I chose the three. I think it's pretty self-evident, actually, that Trudeau, Watson, and the chief of police are the huge losers to their brand, to their reputation. So this has nothing to do with party politics. The police chief is completely nonpartisan. Jim Watson is a municipal mayor. So who are the winners? This is where it gets really, really interesting, Rob, and I really mean this, because I do think there are three winners. Number one, I'm going to say something that's going to be extremely provocative. Warning, trigger warning to everybody. Number one, the protesters have won. Now, lots of people are going to be screaming at me already saying, what are you saying? Everybody hates their guts,
Right, okay.
The purpose of a protest. This is written by Saul Alinsky, and every protester in this country and the States knows this.
Get to it. How did they win?
Raise your profile to way beyond your small numbers relative to the total population, to get the whole country talking about your issues. Mm-hmm. Whether your issues are crazy or wonderful or in between, doesn't matter.
Right.
There must be protesters in this country just drooling. I'm talking pipeline protesters.
Well, I mean, you've seen how it has spread, right?
Yeah,
Windsor, Detroit today. The Coots thing is underway. Exactly. The border crossing, I guess it's open again now, but there were kind of solidarity rallies in other provincial capitals over the weekend. So
if your goal as a protester, whether it's pipelines or forests or doesn't matter, is to get lots and lots and lots of publicity and get the media to cover you, this is one in spades. They're being reported around the world. I was watching BBC last night, and the lead story was my city.
Well, we have a clip of that, actually. We have a montage here. Listen to this. Listen to this, Professor. Just hold on. Do you have that, David? Yeah, listen to this, David. Listen to this, Professor. Yeah.
Dubbed the Freedom Convoy, the movement is being called an insurrection by some, paralyzing the Canadian capital.
The mayor of Ottawa, Canada, declaring a state of emergency as hundreds of trucks with the Freedom Convoy continue to block streets.
Anyone that stands for freedom, liberty instantly becomes the enemy, especially far-left, failed Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
State of emergency in place in Ottawa, where the police chief says COVID protests are a, quote, nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
In Canada, thousands of people have been protesting in the capital.
Canadian truckers are heroes. They are patriots, and they are marching for your freedom.
Clever and significant pushback in the Dominion of Canada with these truckers in Ottawa.
The Dominion of Canada. I love that. Okay, but you're right. World news, right? It's world news.
And if the definition of success for any protester, doesn't matter the subject, is to achieve national media publicity.
But they didn't achieve
attention.
their aims. They didn't achieve their aims, though, which was the end of.
No, but I think protesters want to raise their profile of their cause, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
Let's get on to the second one, and this is where, again, I'm sure there's going to be people very angry at me. I think Pierre Poilievre is a huge winner, and I'll explain why.
Yeah.
First off, he is the only national leader in our country at this moment, to my knowledge, that has any credibility with the protesters. Now, Jim Watson sneered at that and said this is vile and disgusting that an elected member of parliament is able and willing to go and talk to the protesters, which shows you how unbelievably unfit and out of touch Mayor Watson is. The role of MPs is to talk to voters, and these are voters. They're Canadian citizens. They're not from outer space. And where I'm going with this is that he must be, if you're religious, I'm not, but if you were religious, you'd be saying right now, God must be a conservative, and I'll explain why. Just at the moment when the conservatives eliminated their leader, and now there's a national leadership conversation in the Conservative Party, along comes this protest, which is being botched, top to bottom, left to right, by these three people called Trudeau, Watson, and the Chief of Police. And he's come along, and this has given him a gift from the gods. This is a gift, because if Pierre Poilievre seizes the moment, and I'm not saying he will, but he might. If he seizes the moment of this national crisis, this is an incredible opportunity to rebrand himself as a centrist, demonstrate his own leadership skills, and bringing the protest to an end if he does.
Well, I mean, he certainly, he launched, as you know, his leadership campaign. He announced, "I'm running for prime minister." Let's play that a little bit.
Using COVID as a political opportunity, the Trudeau government has attacked small businesses, truckers, and other hardworking Canadians. They target law-abiding hunters and farmers while letting gangsters and gun smugglers run free. See, here's the problem. Trudeau thinks he's your boss. He's got it backwards. You are the boss. That's why I'm running for prime minister.
All right, running for prime minister. Almost 4 million views now, that video.
Yeah. And I want to mention
4 million views.
Lots of people listening will say, "You're such a crazy person."
Well, you kind of are sometimes.
He's reviled. He's despised. I want to use the example of 1968. I remember it so vividly. I was 15, 16. And Richard Nixon, who had been completely discredited as this vicious, vile, anti-communist Doberman pincer, he made Pierre Poilievre look like a Sunday school teacher.
Could never make a comeback, got creamed in the California election.
And it was a gift from the gods for him. Why? Lyndon Johnson was hated. U.S. cities were on fire from race riots. Students were protesting everywhere. And Nixon seized the moment to rebrand himself. These are Nixon's words, I'm quoting to you. "Let us lower our voices. Only I can heal the divisions confronting our country." He was elected as president. And so what I'm saying is, if Pierre Poilievre seizes the moment, right now they're at an impasse. The truckers won't leave, and the rhetoric and the threats by
plus the government won't budge. The government won't budge.
And it's going to get ugly. So if Pierre Poilievre does have credibility with the protesters and does have a connection, what he should do is go and talk to them privately and say, "Look, guys, I'm going to announce that your protest was a success. You've raised the profile of your issues, and now it's time to declare victory and go home. Will you support me on what I just said?" And if they do, and he can pull it off, listen to this. Let's say Pierre Poilievre is able to ask the protesters on camera, all these trucks are pulling out of Ottawa, going down the highway, down the 416, and Pierre Poilievre goes to the microphone and says the following: "Well, the Prime Minister was threatening these people. Well, the Mayor of Ottawa was threatening these people. Well, the Prime Minister was hiding under his bed. I went and solved the national crisis and ended the protest." That is real leadership, not the failed leadership of these three failures.
Okay, we'll stop here. We'll stop there. We'll stop there. When we come back, a little bit more on this and some other things. This is the Rob Snow Show. I'm here with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, and this is City News.
an old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. You know, there's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery's rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. You know, then customer service. You know, we're big on that. The cashiers, the deli. You're not, if you ask for something, they're not going to point, it's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there, okay? If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers. And we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, you know, can you try getting me this? You know, can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now, okay? So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to, you know, live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them that, you know, like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, you know, from like all over the world. And we source it through, you know, distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. You know, we turn over a lot of product. You know, we package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You know, you're always going to find, you know, Cuddy turkey breast, you know, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, like, you know, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. You know, your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, you know, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. You know, takes, you know, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
Opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Back with Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School, Carleton University. Just before, you know, you mentioned 1968, Richard Nixon. 1968 was also the year of Trudeau-mania here in Canada, right? Yeah. And just hold on. Let me, I want to kind of take this in just a different direction just for a second.
Okay.
You remember Pierre Elliott Trudeau was running. There was an election in June of 1968, right? The Trudeau-mania election. He went to Saint Jean-Baptiste in Montreal, to the parade in Montreal, even though the mayor told him, Drapeau said, don't come. They're going to get violent. The separatists hate you.
Okay.
They view you as a traitor. What did he do?
Yep.
Remember, they threw bottles at him and everything else. He stood there, right? Kind of made a name for himself.
Yes, he did.
Right?
I remember vividly.
Yeah, you remember that, right? Now, just hold on.
Okay.
So, you know, you say Mr. Trudeau's been in hiding. You know, he's been in hiding. So he emerged yesterday.
Yeah.
The Sun. And this is what he said. Let's play the clip here.
Everyone's tired of having to wear masks, having to follow public health restrictions. Families like mine just last week that test positive, you know, have to follow public health rules, have to isolate themselves. Nobody wants to do that. I don't know how many conversations parents have had to have with kids about not going to birthday parties, but not getting to have sleepovers. This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians. But Canadians know the way to get through it is to continue listening to science, continuing to lean on each other, continuing to be there for each other. Right on. Everyone's tired of COVID. But these protests are not the way to get through it.
These protests are not the way to get through it, is what he said.
Okay, here's my take, and I'm glad because this segues what I wanted to talk about next. And the situation in 68 was very, very different, and I'll explain now why. Trudeau was standing up to essentially members that were perceived to be members of the FLQ that had absolutely no support in Canadian society. I don't even think they had a lot of support in Quebec society. Okay, they were seen as violent terrorists. Okay, what have we seen for the past 2 weeks? This current protest is overwhelmingly a class-based protest. This protest is supported unbelievably overwhelmingly by ordinary working-class people across Canada. Not professors, not doctors, not people in the Glebe or Westboro or Rockcliffe or people who live in downtown $1 million, $2 million condos. Pierre Poilievre understands this. I believe Jagmeet Singh, who is very intelligent, also understands it, but he went silent because he's trapped, like the Democrats in the States, between the party elites, who are highly educated people like Elizabeth Warren, university professor types, while the base of the NDP and the Democratic Party are common working class people. And so he knew if he came out in favor of the support of the protesters, he would get hammered by the elites in the NDP and vice versa the other way. So he went silent. The third person who understands the meaning of this process and the third winner is Chrystia Freeland. She has...
Why? Where's she been? I haven't seen or heard from her in 2 weeks.
The dog that didn't bark. Right. Let me put it this way, and this is going to offend conservatives and liberals at the same time simultaneously. I believe that Chrystia Freeland and Pierre Poilievre both have high IQ and high EQ.
EQ being
emotional intelligence.
Okay, all right.
Empathy, sensitivity. They understand these structures, these protest movements in society are way beyond the mandates, way beyond vaccines. Trudeau still does. You just played his clip. He still doesn't get it. This is not a protest. Yes, it started out as a protest against vaccines and mandates.
Right.
This is more.
So what is it then? What is it?
Much bigger.
Yeah.
And so, what I think we're seeing, I really believe that Trudeau and Watson and the chief of police are dead men walking. Okay. They don't know it yet. I mean, they're politically dead. They don't know it yet. They don't understand it. They don't even get it. But I think we are before our very eyes in our country.
Right.
All of us.
Well, I mean, Watson's running again. I don't know what the future holds for the Ottawa chief of police, but so you think Trudeau's done? That this is done in Trudeau?
Let me go on the limb. I think we're seeing the emerging Canadian political landscape before our eyes unfold. Pierre Poilievre will be leading the Conservatives and running and creating and crafting a right populism, conservative populist message. I believe Chrystia Freeland will be leading the Liberals, and she'll be crafting a very coherent and thoughtful campaign grounded in left-wing or liberal populism within 2 or 3 years from now. Do we have time to talk about Mark Carney?
Yeah. Mark Carney calls what's happening sedition.
Yeah. I read his op-ed 3 times, and believe me, I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God.
Right. He's writing it as an Ottawa resident, he says.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I assure everybody should read it. Sedition, treason,
treachery.
Treachery. Civil war. The end is nigh. I'm not kidding you. I profoundly believe that this was his Prince Andrew moment in that catastrophically disastrous BBC interview of about a year ago that absolutely destroyed Prince Andrew's standing in the royal family and led to his being kicked out and all of his privileges being removed. He was so bad. This op-ed was once in the fullness of time when things cooled down. I think
I don't know, Professor. I mean, there's a new poll out today from Leger that says 62% of Canadians totally oppose this convoy. Totally oppose it.
I'm not saying that, of course, the election's not today.
So maybe they think it's treachery and treason and sedition and everything.
Listen, what I'm saying, Rob, is I'm not saying that tomorrow morning. I'm saying over the next 2-3 years, as as everything sinks in and it's chewed over and it's analyzed and it's discussed, not just by op-ed journalists and not just by professors, people at home, and there's more clips come out from what Trudeau said or Watson said or Carney said or so forth. And I think that the views right after an event are not the same as 2 or 3 years later when things cool down. And what I'm saying is, I think that, so anyone who thinks that I'm just celebrating Pierre Poilievre, I'm not. I'm saying I think he is winning from this, but I also believe that Chrystia Freeland is going to come out a very, very significant winner as the voice of reason, who stayed above the fray, didn't engage in demonization of working class people in the protest. One more quick point. For all my life, since the 70s, my adult life, all my life, the Liberals and the NDP have portrayed and positioned themselves and always said, look, we're the party of the working class people, ordinary people. We're not the party of the fat cats, the powerful people, the privileged people. That's the Conservatives. And they pulled that line off for 40, 50 years. And we know it's bogus, because who supports the Conservative Party? People that are much less educated, people in the rural. I know I'm not putting down people in the rural, but the overwhelmingly their base is in the rural and the suburbs, and where the incomes are lower, the levels of education are lower. The most privileged people live in the urban core, in the glebe, and the beaches and places like that, and they support over completely Liberal and NDP. My point being, what we have experienced for the last 2 weeks was this gigantic social science experiment in real time. They were put to the test, the NDP and the Liberals. Okay, this is a working class protest, a huge working class protest. Not Glebites, not doctors. Working class. The people you, Mr. Trudeau, claim you've been representing forever as the Liberal Party.
The middle class and those hoping to join it. Those hoping to join it.
Failed the test.
Okay, all right. Okay.
That's the point.
All right. One final quick question on a lighter note. Kansas City not in the Super Bowl, Green Bay not in the Super Bowl. The Los Angeles Rams versus the Cincinnati Bengals. I like the Bengals. What about you?
I am very. I told my students, I just think the young quarterbacks coming in are just amazing.
Yeah.
And Joe Burrows, I was saying since he came to the Bengals 2 years ago from the Fighting Tigers of St. Louis of Louisiana, he is an amazing quarterback. And yes, there's incredible talent on the LA Rams, OBJ, Cooper Kupp, but I think that
Cincinnati.
Joe Burrows is going to pull it off.
Joe Burrow. Okay, all right, Professor. We'll see what happens and see, where the city is this time next week, I guess.
Yes.
Good to hear from you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Provocative as always. Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School, Carleton University. Talk Back Hour. Let's see where this one goes. 750-1310 after the news on City News.
number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 8th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, light snow in Ottawa, -6 degrees, -7 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Provincial opposition calling on the province to take decisive action against the trucker protest in Ottawa. Leader Andrea Horwath used a media briefing this morning alongside Ottawa Centre MPP Joel Harden to ask Premier Doug Ford to step in and take direct action against the truckers.
We need to focus on the dismantling of this, of this action, and that's why today we're calling on Doug Ford to really look hard at the opportunity to get people out by the threat of taking away their ability to be licensed, to have plates, to have an operating certificate for their trucks here in Ontario.
Now, Harden says this protest is unprecedented in Canadian politics, but the aim to impact the federal government has backfired, affecting people who live and work in downtown Ottawa instead. Now, as the convoy continues to grip the nation's capital, many are wondering if the city and police couldn't have been better prepared. Here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
This is the big protest on Parliament Hill, but similar efforts across the country were largely contained. So why couldn't Ottawa do the same? The mayor tells City News the city will be doing a full post-mortem on what went wrong.
A lot didn't go well because we just didn't have the intelligence that said that they were going to stay here. There was the understanding and the advocacy by these groups. They were coming, protesting, having a rally on the Hill, and then going back to the west.
Jim Watson says that obviously didn't happen, and there could definitely have been more efforts to keep the big rigs out of the downtown core, but those are questions best served for the future. As for the beleaguered chief of police, once again Watson threw his support behind Peter Slowly. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A cloudy day, some flurries at times, the high -1, but that's above average. The average high is about -5, -13 for the low, partly cloudy tonight and tomorrow. Flurries at times in the morning, steadier snow for the afternoon. Could collect a couple of centimeters for tomorrow afternoon, the high near 0. For today, the high -1.
And right now with some light snow, it's -6 in Ottawa, -7 in Smiths Falls. That little sticker in the top right-hand corner of your car license plate could soon be a thing of the past. City News has learned provincial government considering scrapping the stickers in a bid to save drivers over $100 a year. The money-saving move comes just months before the provincial election. Here's City News reporter Carl Hansky.
No surprise that every driver I've talked to, like Sean, would love to keep the money they spend to renew their license plate sticker every year.
Oh, $120 with the price of fuel? That's great. Everyone would love it.
But with the provincial election in June, some feel that this is just a pre-election ploy.
Most likely, and it's a good way to get them going.
Will it make you change lanes to your vote?
Most likely.
Others, though, are only really care about the $120.
It's little things that count, right? It's death by 1,000 paper cuts living today, so anything that takes some of the edge off is all right by me.
Eliminating license plate stickers would cost the province $1 billion a year in lost revenue. We're told an announcement, though, is expected in the coming weeks. Carl Hansky, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
This is kind of the overriding question for the talkback hour this morning. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea to end all pandemic-related restrictions right now? How would you answer that question? Good idea or bad idea? Good idea or bad idea? Would you say bad idea? It's too soon to end pandemic-related restrictions. The healthcare system is too fragile. Hospitals still overwhelmed. Case counts, hospitalizations too high. Vaccination rates not where they need to be. We should wait some more before we lift all pandemic-related restrictions. Okay? Bad idea. Bad idea. Is that the camp you're in? Or would you say, yes, it's an idea whose time has come, Not because there's been an almost 2-week protest in Ottawa, this Freedom Convoy, but because, as some health officials have said here in this country, because it's time to learn to live with COVID-19. They're already doing this in other countries. Okay. Ended restrictions in other countries with standards of living, with economies, and with healthcare systems that are much like our own. See, I think you can be opposed to the behavior of some of these protesters, and I most certainly am, and I want to be on the record again by saying that, opposed to some of the behavior of the protesters, most certainly. And I think you can express an opinion that you'd love to see this protest end and everyone who is part of this convoy leave the city. Can't come soon enough, is my opinion, after 12 days of it. But that being said, I still think this is worth the discussion. Good idea or bad idea to end pandemic-related restrictions right now? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Keith, Bell's Corners. Good morning. You're up first on City News.
Hi.
Keith.
How you doing?
I'm good, Keith. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
Just first time calling.
Well, I appreciate you calling, Keith.
I believe that this fiasco with the truckers, we've tripped over our own expectations.
Okay. What do you mean?
I mean, peace, order, and good government, we did not see this coming at all.
Yeah. Isn't that a failure, not to be able to see something like this coming? It was on the news every night for a week.
Well, I think it's somewhat like 9/11 in the States. They kind of ignored the intelligence that they had.
Okay.
Yeah, we saw it coming, but we really didn't believe that these people would be behaving the way they did. We expected peaceful, protests.
Well, that's what the police chief is saying. The police chief said he had assurances from some of the organizers. Do we have that audio, David? The police chief said that he had assurances from the organizers, whoever the organizers happen to be, some of the key organizers, that they were going to come here and basically be gone by Sunday. And he feels as though that they've betrayed him. They betrayed him, that they had some kind of agreement and that they didn't live up to their end of the agreement.
Well, if that's the case...
Yeah.
He's stupid.
Who's stupid? The police chief?
Yes, I'm sorry to say
okay,
that.
all right.
It's not polite, but...
No, that's fine.
I mean, really? Be a little more... creative in your thinking. You believe people at their word who are marching on Ottawa.
Right. Well, look, I was following this a week before it ever arrived in the capital. We had a heads up a week. Hey, Freedom Convoy's coming to Ottawa. We're leaving British Columbia on this day, right? And it's going to take a week to get to Ottawa.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be big. And it was on the news every night. And they made their intentions clear. We're coming to Ottawa, and we're not leaving until all of our demands are met. Right. To me, it was no secret what was coming to the capital.
Well, it's no secret, but I mean, we still didn't believe that they were going to sit around and have this stupid mandate. The Senate, unelected, the Governor General, unelected, and this group of
sure.
Let's have the guillotine. Sort of a misguided, silly triumvirate. Governing Canada. I mean, yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah.
But they're still here.
They're still here.
And
still getting diesel somehow, right? Still getting fueled up somehow.
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge failure here, and I'm just waiting for the rest of the 1800 to march into here and straighten things around, but they won't be able to. It's going to be messy. No matter which way we go. And I thought the bouncy castles were just brilliant.
Okay.
I thought that was just brilliant. civilian, but having kids in there, who the hell is going to march in to try to clear out the protesters with kids in bouncy castles?
Yeah, wouldn't be a good look, I suppose.
Not a good look.
All right,
at
Keith,
all.
we have jam phone lines again today. Not many takers on my questions so far. But, let's see how the hour goes. It's just trying to prompt a discussion here. 750-1310. John, Ottawa. John, go ahead.
Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Good. So my take on what's going on, I think they should get rid of the mandate. All you got to do is look at the real-life science experiment going on in the U.S. right now, where many states don't have the mandate. If you just go into a place like Florida, for example, where the media or people have proclaimed it like it's Armageddon, people are walking around with no mask, it's crazy, it's not. Just go down there. There's no mandate.
Yeah,
You don't have to wear a mask. Many people wear a mask.
Sure.
They wear-
It's not just whatever Florida or Texas or many U.S. states that have ended restrictions, or in the case of Florida, it's been pretty much wide open for a year or so, right? In Florida, it's the UK, it's Norway, it's Sweden, it's Denmark. It's quite a few countries actually. Countries that Florida has a pretty hard right Republican governor. Texas is like Republican central, right? Norway is not. Denmark is not. These are like social democrat, center left, not unlike Mr. Trudeau in many ways. Governments.
And you've seen the government, they talk. Trudeau picked a fight with a bunch of truckers that he underestimated the will of these truckers, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I also think these truckers have also given a voice to many more that said, you know what? Yeah, I'm sick of the mandate. I'm not willing to go down and protest like the truckers have, but I'm sick of the mandate. Please do something. Stop it.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that the idea of ending pandemic-related restrictions. Some people are under the impression that this is like a radical thing, or that this is outside of the mainstream. Yet when the Angus Reid Institute does a survey, and that's one of the most reputable polling firms in the country, does a survey, calls almost 2,000 Canadians. More than half say, yeah, I think it's time to end pandemic-related restrictions, and we'll take care of ourselves and take care of the most vulnerable. I just find it interesting, and it's an opinion that's growing. According to that poll, it was up, 15% since the last time they asked that question.
I'm one of those people. I'd like the truckers to leave the city.
Yeah.
But I'd also like our politicians, when they can sit down and shut down restaurants over the course of a 3-day span, say, look, restaurants are shutting. Restaurants lose all their food.
Oh. Yeah, John, you're cracking up. You're going through a bad cell phone place right there. Dave is in the West End. Dave on City News. Dave. Yeah, Dave's got the radio on. You can't have the radio on, Dave. Come on. We've been telling you that since 1973. Kelly in Westboro. Kelly. Morning, Kelly. Hello, Kelly. Can you hear me? No? Hello, there you are. Kelly, did you have me on mute, Kelly?
I think I did. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I shut my radio off, but had you on mute.
That's okay, Kelly. All right. If it's not one, it's the other. Okay.
I think the mandate should end.
Yeah.
Time.
And again, I'm trying to separate. I think that you can be totally aghast by the behavior of some of these people in our city over the last 12 days, but you can still have a discussion publicly about the need for some of these mandates. The two are not mutually exclusive, right? So, yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. Time to end.
Time to end. Okay. Now, how would you see that happening? I mean, would you, let's say it ends this weekend. You don't have to wear a mask anymore, for example. Like in England, you don't have to wear a mask.
Exactly.
Anywhere.
Yeah, I got lots of
Would
friends in
you
England.
toss them? Would you toss your mask, for example?
Yeah, no, you know what? I say it's up to each individual. I personally would wear one if I was on an airplane or going somewhere.
Right.
If I was going to visit a family member in an old age home.
In a care home or something.
I would wear one.
Right.
I think it's up to everybody, their own. What they want to do, what everybody wants to do themselves. I do believe we need to take care of the elderly.
Yeah. Okay, Kelly, thank you. Okay. Yeah, interesting calls. 10:15, just getting started. And it's going to be another hot one, another busy one. Talk Back Hour, Rob Snow Show. City News.
our business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me. People don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me, I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew that we have to wait, and we knew that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Wedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Wedel famous. I want to make the Wedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian, so all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches, we focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked, I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Wedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box, and do it.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Talking about the future of pandemic-related restrictions and how realistic it is to want to end them all. I mean, this convoy could have totally backfired, and it's all because of how some members have behaved through it all. We may be stuck with COVID restrictions maybe longer than we had to because of things and the way things have unfolded over the last dozen days. Because now you see the positions are hardening, right? Lines have been drawn in the sand. And, politicians like Mr. Trudeau, for example, they won't want to give an inch now. If they give it an inch on whatever, easing restrictions, ending mandates, well, how would that go over? They'd be seen as handing victory to the Freedom Convoy. A group that, politicians have denounced, loudly, repeatedly, to anyone who will listen, right, as a bunch of, hate-filled, far-right rebels. So, the politicians, they can't be seen to be giving in at all to a group like that, not one little bit. Brian Lilley in the Sun is kind of along these lines this morning. At a time when political leaders maybe should be giving thoughts to easing restrictions and letting people get on with their lives. Some are instead choosing to go in the opposite direction, and they're talking about further measures, again, in the interest of public health, like vaccine mandate for truckers who cross interprovincial borders. Vaccine mandates for Uber drivers, other ride-sharing platforms, requiring that the vaccine passport only be used by people who have 3 doses of vaccine and not 2. And Lily's argument goes, why are we contemplating tightening the screws more when it may be possible to kind of loosen them a little? But 12 days ago, it's hard to say. I think the reason is no politician in office right now would ever want to be seen as capitulating to people who have run riot through the Capitol over the last 12 days. I think the protesters had hoped that pressure tactics, maybe even intimidation, would lead to, some kind of surrender on pandemic restrictions. It may have backfired in a big way, in a big way. So let's continue our discussion this morning. Karen in Ottawa, you're on City News. Karen.
Yes, hi. Good morning.
Hi, Karen.
I'll preface by saying I'm a 75-year-old retired healthcare worker.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it's time to let go of all the restrictions. I think we've had enough, and I say let the chips fall where they may.
Really?
Yeah, that's my opinion. I've had enough. I think everybody's had enough, and I think we have common sense on our side that people who feel at risk, like myself, 75 years old, will continue to wear a mask and social distance if they want to. Let's just let it happen.
Limit your contacts, these sorts of things, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever.
I call it common sense. A lot of people might not have. It's very.
I think we have our fill of that.
So let's just. I think that people do what they want. It's enough. Everybody's going crazy, as you can see, and I think it's time to just end it. End all restrictions. That's my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough, Karen. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you take a look at what's, and I'll kind of go through this. You take a look at what's been happening in some other countries. That's always interesting, especially if you talk about countries that are a lot like Canada, right? Liberal democratic countries, advanced economies, like the UK, for example. And about 3 weeks ago, England ended all pandemic restrictions. You don't have to wear masks anywhere. Don't have to show a vaccine passport anywhere. There's no work from home guidance. There's no limit on the number of visitors that are allowed into nursing homes. There's no testing requirements for fully vaccinated travelers. About the only measure that is left is if you have a positive test, you isolate for 10 days. And they say they're going to get rid of that at the end of March. Now, it's England. There are still some local measures in effect in Scotland and Wales. But to me, the thing is, that's always kind of tainted that move because it was made by Boris Johnson, who's in a whole heap of trouble as prime minister because of his hard partying ways when Britain was under lockdown. I mean, there's some question as to whether he survives the week as prime minister. So in an effort to kind of win back some public support, that's what he did. He said, no more pandemic restrictions. I give you your freedom back. But since then, cases in the last 3 weeks, cases are down 14%. COVID-19 cases in the UK. They lifted all restrictions 3 weeks ago. In the last 3 weeks, cases have gone from about 92,000 a day down to 79,000 a day. That's a drop of 14%. Okay. That's one country. We're going to talk about a few more countries, I hope, before the top of the hour. Helen in Westboro.
Hi,
Helen.
good morning.
Hi.
First of all, I totally agreed with Ian Lee today.
Oh, okay. All right. Is that a rarity or?
No, it isn't. No,
okay.
it isn't.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Anyway, one thing
that Watson, the chief, and Trudeau are all the big losers, and Poilievre's the big winner. I think that's what he wanted to.
Yeah,
and Freeland
not
is
so
a
much
winner.
on the big win. First of all, on his analysis of it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, one thing that really concerns me is that nobody's paying attention, or I haven't heard anything about the Johns Hopkins study.
Yeah.
You know, and where the cost of the pandemic is terrible, the savings in mortality is 0.2%. You know, and so it would have been so appropriate for Justin, if he hadn't been hiding, to use this as a way to end the mandates.
Right.
And we had a discussion.
But you understand now, politically, he can't give in now at all, right? He if anything, he has to be more firm in his stance than ever now.
Well, he can use this study as the basis for giving in. It doesn't have to be. Now, I forget my point that I was going to make, but anyway, that's okay. Sacré bleu. Sorry.
That's okay. All right, you think about it and call me tomorrow, Helen. All right,
I'm going to jump. Well, just hold on.
All right.
The cost to the children in school and everything
is
terrible, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and one thing that gets me is the convoy and the... First of all, I expected there would be more violence. I was totally relieved that there wasn't in those first few days. And the people that were on the bridges cheering them on, you know, like, they're also painted with this brush of low-class, uneducated people. And that really irritates me.
Okay.
It really irritates me.
Well, I do wonder what kind of support they would get now if that convoy, you know, kind of restarted back in British Columbia and worked its way east, knowing that some of them would behave like this once they got here.
Some of them. You know what? Like, and look at what...
I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying some of them.
Yeah, a very minute number. There have been few arrests. The arrests that they're doing now are for carrying gas cans and blowing their horns. And they're not arrests, but tickets and whatever.
Yeah.
They haven't been violent. They have not been violent. We've seen more violence from other protests in the past.
Okay. All right, Helen. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay. Ruth in Canada. Ruth. Yes.
Oh, hi, Rob.
Hi, Ruth. Yeah.
100%, Helen. Unbelievable. She's totally right.
Okay.
And Ian Lee, God bless him. Yeah. Pierre Poilievre, he's sent from God.
Right. Okay.
But anyways...
Sent from God. I don't know if he's sent from God.
I know, but anyways, a blessing.
Okay.
And these truckers... I'm so proud of them because people, they bring our food to our grocery stores to put on our tables, our medications across the country. And these truckers, most of them that don't own the trucks, if they're not moving in their trucks, they get paid by the mile.
Yeah. Well, they see, you know, the ones that are in Ottawa aren't getting paid then.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
And these guys are sacrificing everything to get this prime minister who ran to the hills to say, yeah, let's negotiate, let's do something. But no. And this mayor and this chief of police, what a joke. They're lost. They have no clue what to do. So they blame us poor middle class and poor people. You know?
Right.
But not the elite. Oh, the elite's okay, man.
All right. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Ruth.
God bless.
God bless, Ruth. Yep. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye. Back is a kind of a wild one today. Holy smokes, we're herding cats. It's 10:28. Rob Snow Show, Talk Back Hour, City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 8th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -6 degrees. In Smiths Falls, -5. Here's what's making news this hour. Provincial NDP calling on the Premier to take action to end this trucker occupation downtown. Leader Andrea Horwath says the Premier should be taking away the truckers' licenses, operating certificates, and their license to operate in Ontario. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson says a lot did not go well at the start of this protest, but instead of laying blame today, he says let's get an end to the protest and then do a post-mortem and figure out what they did well and what the city may have not done well. Ontario's Housing Affordability Task Force has a report out today recommending 1.5 million homes be built in the next 10 years. The government-appointed task force says house prices in Ontario has nearly tripled in 10 years, far outpacing income growth. Many of the 55 recommendations suggest ways to limit development being stifled by local opposition to housing projects. City News Time at 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
So it's interesting. Happening right now, there's a Liberal member of Parliament. His name is Joel Lightbound, and he is challenging his own government's position on things like vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, travel restrictions. Quote, according to David Aiken's Twitter account, this is a news conference that's happening right now. We're trying to find a feed of it right now. Quote from this Liberal MP, for now, for how long, I don't know. People don't know where public health ends and politics begins. According to Liberal member of Parliament Joel Lightbound, he is a Quebec member of Parliament. Louis Hébert is the riding. So that's interesting. We're following it, and I'm sure it will be the talk of the Hill soon enough. The question, again, I know people want to go off in all directions. I'm trying to keep it as focused as we can, but not doing a very good job today. Pandemic-related restrictions is what, this MP is talking about right now. Good idea, bad idea, and those pandemic-related restrictions even doable? Some are going to say it's too soon. The healthcare system's still too fragile. There's still too many people in the hospital. The case counts, as far as we know, probably still too high. Like to get the vaccination numbers higher, and we should wait. Let's take our time. Before we lift all of these pandemic-related restrictions. Others might say it's an idea whose time has come, and it has nothing to do with this 2-week protest in Ottawa here by these truckers. They're already doing this in other countries. Top health officials in this country have said, we need to learn to live with COVID-19. Yeah, you can be opposed to the behavior of some of the protesters. I am. You think you can think they should leave the city. I do. But that being said, I still think this is a worthy discussion point here. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Line 3 is Phil Orleans. Good morning, Phil.
How you doing, Rob?
Okay, I'm good, Phil. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm calling about the truckers' protest.
I bet, yeah.
It's Valentine's Day coming up, and you know how much the restaurants are going to suffer downtown?
Okay.
Reno Center closed,
Reno Center
Winterlude
closed.
being affected.
Yeah.
Winters, whatever was good of it is shot.
Okay.
Anyways, to my point.
Yeah.
To get rid of the truckers, you put 3 fire pumper trucks up on Parliament Hill on that driveway, and you tell them to be out of there by Saturday night.
Right.
Or when it's -20, you flood it like a rink in winter.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, I'm serious. You're going to freeze, or you're going to leave.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I guess the goal, I guess, where a lot of people are questioning it, I guess the idea is not to inflame things anymore. They don't want to heighten the tension more than it already is, Want to take the temperature down, not ratchet it up, right? So.
Well, something has to be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sooner than later, it's been 2 weeks.
Yes, it's been almost 2 weeks, sir. I'm right there with you. Right there with
you. It could be another 3 or 4.
Yeah, but you want to diffuse it peacefully, right, Phil?
Well, you got water. It's a hose. What are they going to do?
Well, you've got a lot of trucks up there, though. A lot of big trucks.
Got a lot of hoses.
Yeah, a lot of hoses. Okay. The answer is fire trucks and hoses. Okay, Phil. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Let's this one. Jason, Spencerville, in lovely Spencerville. Jason.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
It's good, sir. Thank you.
I got lots to say, so I'll be real quick.
Okay.
To the last caller that just called in. The problem with that is I'm going to let you in on a little scoop.
Okay.
There is more money coming into these truckers than you could shake a stick at. I happen to know that on both ends. I have a lot of friends on the City of Ottawa side.
Yeah.
Got a lot of truckers down there. They both tell me that there's a lot of money coming in. Nobody will tell me exactly where that money's coming from, but that's $10 million. That's a drop in the hat. So I'm kind of like the bad news bearer.
Well, I mean, I was reading, the $10 million is basically gone to money heaven now, but they've been fundraising on this other platform, right? And they've raised, I think at last count, it was like $5 million or something. So,
well, that's what we know of.
Well,
but there's other money that's.
So how are they? I wonder how they're divvying it up and doling it out. Is what I wonder.
That I don't know.
Yeah.
That I don't know. But it just goes to show, setting up fire hoses and flagging them out. You're just going to inflame the situation.
Yeah.
Somebody dropped, I couldn't believe it. I was watching TikTok and somebody had dropped a roll-off bin of stones, of rocks, hand-sized rocks. So I called my buddy who works in the city. I said, is this true? He said, yeah. But they told him to get the heck out of there. Get that the hell out of there. You're just asking, you're asking for a war. One stone gets thrown at a cop, auto cop, RCMP, OPP.
Right.
Holy man, you're just asking for a big
Yeah,
fight.
I mean, you want to diffuse the situation peacefully. You don't want any of these protesters to be hurt, and you don't want anyone else to be hurt. You don't want any police officers to be hurt.
The good people know what has to happen. The Liberals are still just up in arms. They want this to disappear. Well, get on the bandwagon. Get that goof on the hill to come down and say, listen, okay, I propose an idea. I've listened to you. I still don't, sit down at the round table. But he just won't. He's under the bed or doing something.
Well, he doubled down yesterday. Doubled down in the House yesterday, right? He doubled down. Yeah.
That's
okay.
Right.
All right, Jason. Thank you. Do we? This Lightbound fellow, the Liberal MP. He's speaking now, is he, David?
Yeah. Are contemplating losing what they've spent their whole lives building, and that's when it hasn't happened already. I've heard from fellow Quebecers who are rightfully appalled that in our province, in 2022, we're locking up triple-vaxxed seniors for days on end. I've heard from fellow Quebecers appalled that in Quebec, in January 2022, we have locked up kids aged 6 to 10 years old for up to 10 days in windowless rooms. Kids who tested negative, who had no symptoms, who had been in contact with someone, though, who had the virus. So let me repeat. In Quebec, in 2022, we locked up kids aged 6 to 10 for up to 10 days in windowless rooms. Let that sink in. This was a public health measure that had been drafted, approved, and applied. I've heard from people worried that we seem collectively to have forgotten that a population's health is kind of like a pie, and Omicron is but a slice of that pie. Economic health, social health, and mental health must be accounted for. I've heard from people worried that those making the decisions seem at times to have been blind to the fact that we're not all equal before lockdowns, that not everyone can earn a living on a MacBook at the cottage. I've heard people worried that a few might have lost sight of the quiet and discreet suffering of the many. I've heard people in great pain to see some of their friends whom they love and respect, but who've decided, for whatever reason we might very well disagree with, who've decided not to get vaccinated, and as a consequence, are jobless, selling what they have and moving to the United States, away from their communities, away from their friends and from their families. I've heard from teachers worried to see kids reenacting in the schoolyard the kind of discrimination and segregation we see in our society between vaccinated and unvaccinated. I've heard from people worried to see those they care about fighting each other on this issue, tearing some families and some friends apart. I've heard from a lot of people wondering why just a year ago we were all united, all in this together. And now that we have one of the most vaccinated population in the world, we've never been so divided. Now, these people are increasingly confused when, on the other hand, they hear experts like Dr. Carl Weiss, a renowned Quebec epidemiologist, state last week, and I quote, that COVID-19 is here to stay, that those at risk will have to be monitored closely when symptoms appear, that we will have to protect our healthcare systems, but that we will also have to live with the virus like we do with influenza.
Okay, that's interesting.
That we
All right,
can't
David,
go back to
thank you. I think we get the gist of that. That is Joel Lightbound. He's a Liberal member of Parliament. He's part of Team Trudeau. Just following David Akin on Twitter in a direct rebuke to his party's leader, Liberal MP Joel Lightbound, says of the protesters, I respect people enough not to label them, and says they have legitimate concerns. So we'll see how much longer Mr. Lightbound is actually a Liberal member of Parliament after everything that has happened. So let's get right back to the phones. I just wanted to hear that. That's an interesting development. You don't get too many kind of breakaways from the Liberal team. David in the West End. David.
Geez, thanks for that, Rob.
Yep, you're welcome,
Thank you
sir.
very much for that.
Yep.
He should run for Prime Minister.
Well,
my goodness.
Yeah, okay.
Talk about common sense.
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting development because it's like dissension in the ranks, you know? So, yeah.
Rob, that John Hopkins report has been buried. Why is it every time they had other reports, we followed them to the letter?
Right.
Because they certainly do their research and know what they're talking about. This time it's being buried. And what's being buried is this thing should be over.
No, but if you know about it, you know about it, right?
Yeah, I know, because I watch Fox.
Well, whatever. It's been reported all over the news, though.
No, it's never been on CNN.
Well, I don't know. I don't watch Fox or CNN.
I know you don't.
I find them both they're both unwatchable, if you ask me. But
Rob, my nephew is a minister, and he's down there with the truckers every day. And you know who he's commenting on and giving a heads up to? The Ottawa Police. Said the Ottawa Police that are down there are doing a good job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He said they're not harassing. You know, they're conversing, they're talking, and you know, Trudeau would have had a feather in his hat had he stopped this thing right in its track when it was on its way down the highway. He would have announced the letting these restrictions drop.
Okay.
And that would have.
But then he would have been seen as capitulating or giving in or rolling over.
Canadians
whatever.
Capitulate. We recognize right from wrong.
Yeah.
It's not capitulating.
Yeah.
It's common sense.
Well, I mean, he's dug in now.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, yes, because that's who he is.
Right. How would it look now?
Yes. How would it look now?
Right. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it should end right now. And let those people go back to their families. But that one lad that you had on saying about the money that's coming in,
yes,
it's coming in dribs and drabs, even from Ottawa, and it's coming in big time from the States, big time.
Yeah.
So we're inspiring the rest of the world.
Well, inspiring. Yeah, I suppose. Okay. Yeah. All right, Dave. Thank you. I guess what I want to get at is, even without this convoy, is it legitimate to even entertain ending pandemic-related restrictions? As I said, they have done this in other countries. I mentioned what they did in the UK. Denmark, made a lot of headlines. The first country in the EU to end all COVID-19 related restrictions. Saying, quote, and this is from CNN, quote, COVID-19 is no longer a socially critical illness, according to the government of Denmark. The country has a vaccination rate of 81%, which is very close to our vaccination rate. And Politico reports that 61% of Danes have had a booster shot. This is from Politico. Quote, "It feels unreal. I'm just thinking, yes, I can finally live my life normally again." Nick Rasmussen, a happy nightclub customer, told the national broadcaster DR. For older generations, supporting the reopening of nightclubs is their way of showing solidarity with the youth who have done what's been asked of them to protect older and vulnerable people. Older generations are now taking on the additional costs of protecting themselves during this wave in solidarity with the rest of society, said Michael Bang Peterson, professor of political science, Aarhus University, who's been advising the government. He added, "It's easier to bear now because they feel more confident in dealing with the risks." The wearing of face masks is no longer required in shops, restaurants, on public transit. Nightclubs were reopened, late-night alcohol sales permitted, and the checking-in app to enter venues was dropped. Limits on the number of people allowed at indoor gatherings and social distancing measures have ended. Unvaccinated travelers from outside Denmark's free travel zones are still restricted. Face masks must continue to be worn in hospitals and care homes. So very interesting, very interesting. And there's been also almost no change in the number of daily cases. I mean, there's been no big decrease or increase. And the head of government in Denmark is a woman, a social democrat, described as center-left. So no masks, no vaccine passport, no capacity limits. I just find that interesting. And I wonder if you do. Kevin in Charlotte Lake. Hi, Kevin.
How are you today?
Good. Kevin, thank you.
Definitely time to move on. It's been about 2 years. We've learned a lot.
Yes,
and if we're not going to drop all of them, I think it's maybe time that we start to shift them to maybe the most vulnerable population to protect them.
Right. Yes.
The problem is maybe how many would classify themselves as, vulnerable if there was restrictions set on them. They could be, in that gray area where they could be high risk, but if it restricts their freedoms, they may not want to classify as high risk.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But, maybe it's time to take a look at this from a personal responsibility point of view, Kevin.
Yeah, everybody should still have the right to wear a mask if they want and protect themselves.
Absolutely.
We have curbside pickup that, the vulnerable can use, the unvaccinated can use, but...
Well, you remember when all of this first started. Yeah, Kevin, sorry to interrupt. You remember when all of this started, there was like seniors' time in the grocery stores in the morning, for example.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Maybe,
so we can still implement all these things to keep it safer for everyone, but I don't think we have to slow down the economy, people losing their jobs and stuff, just for, the vulnerable few that would maybe still risk their safety to enjoy their years.
Yeah, and you can contemplate that with or without 100 trucks in the downtown core and 5,000 people yelling and screaming in the downtown core.
I agree. Just like you said, they knew it was coming from the Monday from BC, and they could have had contact with people to negotiate or set up something better.
Absolutely. I was talking about that on the radio a week before that convoy arrived here. We were talking about that.
So it's not like it was sprung on anything.
No, we knew when it was going to arrive. We knew down to the hour when it was going to arrive in Ottawa. All right, Kevin, thank you. All right, 10:49, Rob Snow Show. Back in just a moment with some more calls. 750-1310, City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying, and then I shut my business down for I think a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries, started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting, and anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not, but more so now because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff, and then again, their situations and their circumstances change.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
All right, let's get back to the calls here. We don't have a lot of time left. Dave, Smith Falls. Dave. Good morning, Dave.
Morning, Rob. I got 2 small points to make.
Sure thing.
That's kind of, been irking me. Number one, everybody's on liberal Jimmy Watson.
Okay.
He's kind of in a hard spot.
Oh, I would say so, yeah.
And the same with Doug Ford. This all generated with, my self-belief is, everybody's saying, what's the provincial government doing? Well, there's not just Ontario's downtown, is there? This is a Canadian issue, and this is where Trudeau should be stepping up to the plate. And also...
Well, he stepped up to the plate last night.
Oh, sure. Isn't that fancy? And now all of a sudden, over the last 2 days, we started hearing how...
So he stepped up to the plate, and in your opinion, he struck out, Dave, is what you're saying.
Well, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Just as, as the professor stated, Krista Freeland. Krista Freeland couldn't handle Candace Bergman on the very first day. She handed her hat,
Okay.
Now, another thing, I know, I've been listening to you long enough. You believe in, freedom of choice, do you not?
Sure. Yeah, freedom. Yeah. Who doesn't believe in freedom, sir?
Yeah. So the Rideau Center.
Like, am I supposed to say, you know what, Dave? I'm opposed to freedom. We should have more tyranny. Who's going to say that, right?
Exactly. But, the Rideau Center, the stores downtown, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I feel sorry.
It's 175 stores there.
Absolutely. And I took a drive down through there on Saturday. I do feel sorry for the residents. However, freedom of choice, they chose to stay closed, correct? Just as the protesters did. And everybody was saying, what's the city doing? What's the city doing? What's the Ontario Premier? Where is he? Well, you can move Capitol Hill to Kemptville, and they would be living this right now, would they not?
I would assume so, yeah.
Yeah, let's start pointing the finger where the finger needs to be pointed.
Okay.
And that, and you know what? Everybody said Justin. Yeah, he failed. He should be gone. I agree 100%.
Okay.
However, Justin is a figurehead. He's a puppet.
A puppet for who?
He is a puppet for the Liberal government. He cannot make decisions on his own. Heck, he can barely talk on his own.
Well, I don't know. He's the chief. I mean, he's the most powerful figure in the country. Is any prime minister.
Absolutely,
right.
as is any prime minister. But I would like to think that everything comes to a vote. Whether it's the prime minister, whether it's the queen, whoever,
right. Yeah,
they take direction.
Yeah. Well, they take advice. They take advice, right?
Yeah.
They take advice. I don't think they take direction. I don't know if this prime minister takes direction. All right, Dave. Look, gotta go. I want to take in just a couple of more here. We'll take a couple of more. Yeah, and lots of new callers, new voices. Constance Bay, Ryan.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
Good, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Good. I just have a question for you. Where do you stand on the mandates?
On the mandates, I think that the mandates for the truckers was one step too far, and I question the need for it for the truckers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. As I said, and I've said this repeatedly, the country was already swimming in Omicron, right? What was the purpose of the mandate for cross-border truckers? I understand the government says, well, we wanted to have a policy that aligned with the American policy, and Joe Biden's administration did what it did, so we had to do what we had to do. That's their line. They're sticking to it. You can't shake them from it. But if it's the idea that making sure cross-border truckers are fully vaccinated as some sort of health prevention measure, COVID prevention measure, I remain unconvinced that was a big issue to begin with, Ryan. Yeah. And it has set off, this unholy mess. And using language like fringe minority certainly didn't help. That also set off a lot of people.
Or racist or misogynist.
Racist, misogynist, fringe minority. Set off a lot of people.
You're totally right. Yeah. And they could end it all. Like they say, it doesn't matter if they end it. They're still not allowed to cross the border. But they could end this protest by saying, okay, well, there'd be no mandate.
But now they can't. Because they're so dug in. They don't want to turn this will be my freedom convoy into a victory convoy. It's the Rob Snow Show on City News.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 101.1 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 8th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -6. It's -5 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Why wasn't the City of Ottawa and Ottawa Police Service more prepared for the convoy when it entered Ottawa? City News reporter Chris Curries tells us it's because they didn't have the right intelligence level.
All that information gathering, security preparedness, police and the city had different plans than the convoy. The mayor says they expected demonstrators to show up, honk their horns, and leave, which obviously has not happened. So Jim Watson says they will do a post-mortem in the future because he has questions.
Why didn't we cut off access sooner, and why wasn't there greater coordination in terms of the 417 and off-ramps and so on?
He tells City News the current priority is to get the trucks out of the downtown core and dealing with the constant whack-a-mole-like effort to take away fuel from the convoy. He says he has full confidence in the police chief in getting that done. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 11:02. Now, the provincial opposition is calling on the province to take its own action against this protest. Leader Andrea Horwath used a media briefing this morning alongside Ottawa Centre MPP Joel Harden. They're asking Doug Ford to step in and take direct action against the truckers.
We need to focus on the dismantling of this, of this action. And that's why today we're calling on Doug Ford to really look hard at the opportunity to get people out by the threat of taking away their ability to be licensed, to have plates, to have an operating certificate for their trucks here in Ontario.
Now, Harden says the protest was unprecedented in Canadian politics, but the aim to impact the federal government backfired, instead affecting people who live and work in the downtown Ottawa instead. City News time 11:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A cloudy day, some flurries at times, the high -1, but that's above average. The average high is about -5. -13 for the low, partly cloudy tonight and tomorrow. Flurries at times in the morning, steadier snow for the afternoon. Could collect a couple of centimeters for tomorrow afternoon, the high near 0. For today, the high -1.
And right now in Ottawa, -6. In Smiths Falls, it's -5. A Liberal MP may be going rogue over the issue of vaccine mandates as downtown Ottawa remains pretty much locked down due to the protest now into week number 2. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
According to La Presse, Joël Lightbound, a Quebec MP who is seen as a rising star in the Trudeau government, is going to hold a news conference soon where he is going to speak out against vaccine mandates, something his government has put in place, and the Prime Minister, even last night in the House of Commons, defended. La Presse reports that Lightbound may even decide to quit as the Quebec Liberal chair. The report says that there were ministers and others involved in the Liberal Party who tried to convince him of the merits of mandatory vaccination policy, but to no success. Now, this comes as this convoy protest continues to keep the capital basically shut down in the downtown area. Convoy protesters held a late-night news conference where they suggested they're willing to form a coalition government with opposition parties and the Governor General. They also made references to the size of bullets when verbally attacking the Prime Minister. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
All right, so happening right now, just to keep you up to date, it's very interesting. Dissension in the Liberal ranks. This is a Liberal MP, a Quebec Liberal MP. His name is Joël Lightbound, speaking.
You alluded to
doing a news conference right now.
Because of their vaccination status. Do you have an opinion on the enforcement of the Treasury Board's own policy?
No, I don't. I think...
Can I ask you, You can have strong feelings about the Constitution or charter rights. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to call a news conference. I can only assume that you did so because you have a sense that there could be far-reaching consequences of current events. If I'm correct, if I'm not, please advise. If I'm correct, what is your concern or fear?
Well, my concern is that at this point, Canada is one of the highest, one of the highest vaccinated population in the world, and I think it's time to move away from the division that I'm observing, and it's got nothing to do necessarily with the protest. I see it in society by and large, and I think we need to change our tone, and we need to provide a roadmap with clear benchmarks for when measures will be lifted. I think it's reasonable to say that these measures, whether it be vaccine passports for travel in this country or vaccine requirements for travelers internationally, I think it's reasonable to say that these measures should be exceptional in nature and limited in time. And so I think the government must provide a roadmap for stating clearly under what conditions will these measures be lifted. I'm encouraged to see that Dr. Tem said last week that all public health policies need to be reevaluated.
Microphone to my left.
Ian Bailey, Globe and Mail. Does the fact that you're here today holding a news conference indicate that you had no faith that expressing your views in caucus, sort of talking about these issues in caucus, would have little effect in getting the government to change course?
I still am hopeful that the government will change course and adopt a different approach. And that's my ask today. I made my views known in caucus many times, and at this point I felt I owed it to myself and to my constituents to state clearly where I stand as their representative.
Wow.
And can you elaborate, if I heard you correctly, on your...
We're following that. That's a really interesting story as we welcome syndicated columnist, political commentator, former speechwriter to Stephen Harper. Michael Taube here for his weekly appearance on the Rob Snow Show. Good morning.
Hey, Rob.
Well, that's a rare sight. Dissension.
Yeah. I'm astonished. My God. I mean, not that you don't see members of governments go rogue. Obviously, it's happened in Canadian history and throughout other parties and in parts of history. But this is actually kind of stunning because no Liberal MP thus far had spoken out against the mandatory vaccination rule that the Liberals had implemented for truckers and other essential workers. And some of the language that he's using is, you can interpret as either going rogue or that he is basically trying to create a very fine line between the way that he feels and possibly others, as he alluded to in his press conference, versus the majority of the Liberal caucus. It's an interesting break, if nothing else.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see because I'm just kind of looking at his face, and I think he knows just by looking at him. This is just my sense of it. Maybe that sounds kind of weird. I think he knows he's done as a Liberal MP.
Well, when you say a line like this, and I'm quoting this directly from several sources did it, but Rachel Gilmore, CTV, copied it word for word. So let's do it as a direct quote. He actually said at one point, not everyone can earn a living on a MacBook at a cottage. Now, you can interpret that as many ways you want. I think we know where that's been shot. And that's an astonishing comment to make for someone who, as your station said right off the top, and I agree with them, was a rising star in the party, was their Quebec lieutenant, and seemed to be moving in a position, if nothing else, where he would become more powerful in the party over time, not necessarily to become its leader, but obviously an influential junior then to senior member of the caucus. I think he does know that his days are numbered.
Okay. Very interesting. We're going to follow that. We'll be following that. Okay. Want to talk about the next Conservative leader and who that might be? Okay. Because this was a topic of your recent column in the National Post. Let's play the Poilievre. David, do you have the Poilievre thing good? Yeah, okay. All right. Go ahead, David. Poilievre launches the race on Twitter. This is
using COVID as a political opportunity. The Trudeau government has attacked small businesses, truckers, and other hardworking Canadians. They target law-abiding hunters and farmers while letting gangsters and gun smugglers run free. See, here's the problem. Trudeau thinks he's your boss. He's got it backwards. You are the boss. That's why I'm running for Prime Minister.
Okay,
to put you back in
He's
charge.
running for Prime Minister.
Right.
No, not I'm running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. I'm running for Prime Minister. So what are you've known him, as you've mentioned many times, since he was an intern to Jason Kenney. What are Pierre Poilievre's strengths and weaknesses, in your opinion?
Well, the strengths, as I kind of alluded to in my National Post piece, and I don't have to parrot the whole thing, basically very intelligent, very capable, very experienced in politics. He's been a politician for a long time, and very media savvy. He knows how to sell himself, he knows how to sell his party, and he knows how to sell the political brand, that being of Canadian conservatism. So I think all those things work heavily in his favor, because you need someone who, again, he's a young man, he's only in his 40s, he has a young family, he has a mindset that melds different sorts of components of fiscal conservatism, social conservatism. He has different positions. He's fairly moderate when it comes to gay marriage and other things. He's bilingual. He has a mixture and several elements that make him a very strong candidate and make him a good choice if time goes along, and depending how things roll, if he wins the party leadership, to become Prime Minister one day. Negatives, look, everyone obviously always attacks him on a couple things. You know, they often say, well, he's too much of an ideologue. But again, as I pointed out in my National Post column, Rob, being an ideologue is not necessarily a bad thing if you're trying to sell a political message. So if someone believes in the tenets of small C conservatism, you know, small government, low taxes, more individual rights and freedoms, et cetera, that's the sort of person you want to have there. You want to have someone who is ideologically grounded, but can sell a message from his or her vantage point, and then hopefully sell it to the point where it resonates with a much larger audience, that being the voting public. And the other attack that people say, which is a negative, they claim that he's a pit bull, and they look through his history of critical comments, controversial statements, et cetera. But again, part of the messaging that he has used his whole career includes such things as passion and, you know, using strength as a form of power. If you want someone as a leader who is going to basically go after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Liberals on every single point he disagrees with, well, Pierre Poilievre is as good as anyone in that caucus for doing so. So basically, if you don't want a leader who's going to walk on eggshells and will at least know how to direct criticism or produce a different type of policy idea or statement that is contrary to what the Liberal government stands for, then being a pit bull may be a negative in some people's eyes, but it's not necessarily a bad thing overall. And that's sort of where I think Poilievre stands right now.
Okay, all right. Tasha Karadan said on her Twitter account today she's been approached about a leadership run and is thinking about it. I'll get back to you. So this is fellow columnist in the Post, as a matter of fact, a frequent commentator in the media. Serious conservative chops.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Tasha's a friend. Tasha's been a friend for a long, long time. She was actually on the advisory board of my old paper, From the Right. We've known each other more than a quarter century. I have a lot of time for her. She's intelligent. She's capable. She's a good speaker. She has good ideas. Obviously some of them are different than mine or others, but she would be a fine person to run for the leadership of the party. I certainly believe in that. The big problem, unfortunately, is the same issue that I was critical of Leslyn Lewis of when she ran for the leadership of the party in 2020. She doesn't have experience in politics. As an outsider, she's worked in politics. She's worked for politicians. She has never run for elected office. She's never held elected office. And you need to get your feet wet, at least even just for a term, to have a real shot of being a viable contender. It doesn't mean that she doesn't bring a lot of strengths to the table. She definitely does, and Tasha brings a ton. But that is something that's a major, major weakness, and I think it's going to be a problem for her. And even amusingly, I think that Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun got something that, I think that everyone will get a good laugh out of, and maybe she even did too. one of the first people, or one of the early people to talk about considering her candidacy, or saying if you want an adult in the room, was Jerry Butts. You know, he, a former chief of staff and good friend of Justin Trudeau. Unfortunately, sometimes things like that, and I think most conservatives know this, even if Jerry Butts' statement was well-meaning, and I'm sure it was, that can also be the kiss of death.
Right.
The party.
Oh, gosh. Jerry Butts likes her. No way. I'm not. Yeah.
Right. He's a, no. To be fair,
I know. But he's a
good guy. He's a smart strategist.
Sure. But for a lot of people, he's like Beelzebub. You never see, him and Satan in the same room together, right? So
I hope not. Jeez.
Okay. All right.
God.
Yeah. Anyway. I hate to say that about a fellow Cape Bretoner, but there you go. All right.
I know.
Alain Reyes. I like this guy. He's such a strong performer in the House when they need to be hammering away in French. And he was Andrew Scheer's and Aaron O'Toole's political lieutenant for Quebec.
Correct.
And now is organizing for an unnamed progressive candidate. What do you think that could mean?
Well, the rumor mill, as you've probably seen, and maybe you've even talked to him on your program, is former Quebec Premier Jean Charest. That's where most people are pointing towards.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if it's Charest. I don't know who he's touting. Again, a progressive candidate, you're playing the us versus them mentality once again in the caucus, which is never clever. It's nice to have this hidden message or having a messenger out there doing your bidding, but that never looks good, and it's never a great strategy. I think the thing is, if it's someone like Charest, who again, I've known him off and on for years, nice guy, but ideologically, he doesn't really fit with today's Conservative Party, and quite frankly, he hasn't fit with the Conservative brand in a long time. Again, that's not an attack on people. There are obviously different Conservatives with different ideological points of view, but modern conservatism does not necessarily represent the type of leadership that Jean Charest had, not when he was actually federal PC leader way back when. That ship has sailed a long time ago. So if Charest wants to enter, certainly under name recognition, he'll obviously get lots of people. He'll get money. I'm sure he'll get endorsements from prominent conservatives from the old federal PC brand and others. But again, I think that Alain Reyes, and I have respect for him too, I think he's putting his chips in the wrong place. But again, it's a free society. If that's who he wants to back,
that's why they
or someone else, fine.
That's why it's a race. That's why they call it a race, right? Okay, we're 12 days in here into the honk-apocalypse here in Ottawa, as some people call it. The Toronto protest was a one-day wonder. They came, they protested, they left. Ottawa, 12 days. 12 days and no end in sight, really. No end in sight.
No.
Why do you think we're 12 days into it and Toronto was a one-day wonder? Is it because we're the capital? Is it really that easy? We're the capital?
Well, it does help. I mean, we only had, as you would say, a teeny tiny honk, and you're absolutely right. It was very quick. The one day, and it was, again, similar to Ottawa, mostly peaceful, no problems, just a lot of people just dancing, celebrating, saying what they believed in. Obviously there was honking around here, and it ended. I think that you're right. The nation's capital, or being in the nation's capital of Ottawa, is one of those reasons why it's lasted so long. Plus, if you're going to have real impact is at Parliament Hill. It's not in Toronto. It wouldn't be in any other place either. I mean, obviously, we've seen elements of the truckers' protest or just the Freedom Convoy and some of the holdups that we've seen in parts of Alberta, the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor. There's certainly been a lot of effects of it, and naturally the whole thing as a whole works to an advantage for people who obviously support more freedom and want to end government regulation restrictions, especially when it comes to mandatory vaccination. But yeah, I think the reason that it's been in Ottawa for so long, and certainly for the foreseeable future until something happens, is because you're sitting in the nation's capital. It has the most impact, and you have a lot of, obviously the press is there. There's a heavy presence of a lot of individuals and people who are going to keep their eyes on things. TV, radio, newspapers, you've got everything there, and more will just keep focusing there. Plus, for international media, you would want to do it in the nation's capital as well. Much like a major protest in the United States, you can have it anywhere, but the greatest impact you'll have is Washington, D.C. Same thing works for Ottawa, so that's why it's still going on.
Right, Michael. Great stuff. We'll talk next week. Be well.
You too.
Thanks again, syndicated columnist Michael Taube. David Coletto, Abacus Data, on their latest data about the local reaction to the Freedom Convoy. When we come back, Rob Snow Show, City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic, but we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly. But it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did, but I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us, but we thought we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food, and we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients, and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and have the food there, you can really compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have from combos and to small sandwiches. One of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef. And we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's great to have David Coletto back on City News. David is the CEO of Abacus Data with some new polling numbers out on how people in Ottawa feel about the Freedom Convoy. David Coletto, good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How you doing?
I'm great. It's so nice to hear from you. So generally speaking, are we for it or against it?
Let's just put it this way: we're overwhelmingly against it, and those who say they strongly oppose the convoy, which is almost half of residents, is 4 times the size as those who say they strongly support it. So, overall, it's about 22% who support it and 67% who are opposed. That being said, there's a small group who do support it, but the overwhelming majority and the intensity of views is on the opposition side.
Okay, yeah, overwhelmingly, right? Not even close.
Not even close.
Yeah,
I mean,
not
there's
even
just pockets of support, as we've seen when we do national polls. But for the most part, whether you live in downtown or central Ottawa, whether you live out west or in the east side of the city, majorities are opposed, whether you're young or older. Even if you are somebody who voted Conservative in the last federal election, 64% of Conservative voters say they're opposed to it.
Wow,
so
that's interesting.
I think because this convoy is not theoretical for us, it's real, right? It's affecting 1 in 5 people say it's infected their lives either a lot or somewhat, mostly in the center part of the city, but nonetheless, it's real. And so when it's a real event that's affecting our lives, it's no longer just about, connecting with the cause. It's about that at this point, a weekend, it's become disruptive.
Yeah, I have to get downtown. I live downtown, or I have to get downtown, or my family member has to work downtown, or one way or another. 1 in 5 have been directly affected by it. So, yeah, that speaks to it. So when things are not going well, you look for somebody to blame, and you asked, how do you think each of the following have handled the demonstrations downtown? The police service, Mayor Watson, Premier Ford, City Council, Prime Minister Trudeau. Looks to me here, Prime Minister Trudeau gets the worst marks.
He does.
Right?
He's got more than half who say he's done poorly or very poorly. 34% say very poorly, far higher than any of the others that you mentioned there. And the thing that really drives the Prime Minister's numbers is that he gets particularly poor marks from those who support the convoy, as you might expect, given that he is often the center of their attention. But even among those who oppose the convoy itself, high numbers look at what the Prime Minister has done and say, look, I don't think he's done a very good job. And I think, this survey was done before he made his comments in the House of Commons last night. But I think part of what's driving it is a sense of, where are you? Yes, there's multi-jurisdictions, and everyone's, reacting to this poll on Twitter by saying, hey, it's not his job. This is not his. Canadians don't think about whose job it is. They look to their leaders to provide, information and comfort to say, we will solve this. We will find a way out of it. And I think the Prime Minister hasn't, this is my view now, hasn't done that. And that's why he's seeing such high negatives in his numbers. Now, that doesn't mean Premier Ford is off the hook. There's lots who think he hasn't done a very good job. And even Mayor Watson, although he's got probably the better numbers in this, no one wins out of this whole scenario. Many people, I think, have looked at the mayor and say, look, the city only has so much it can do. And while they don't love what he's done, they're much more likely to say, as well as can be expected given the circumstances.
As well as can be expected, and that's what they say about the council as well. But what about the police?
Well, the police is actually the most, mixed view. They get the highest number of people saying they've done a good job, 30%. They get close to the lowest in terms of negatives at 40. So it's not like everyone's loving the job the police are doing. But what's most important about the police, in the same way that Justin Trudeau drives supporters of the convoy mad, the police actually have a lot of goodwill among those who support the convoy, right? So they get the highest marks from those who say, I like this convoy, I support it. Very few of those folks think they've done a bad job, whereas those who want this convoy out of the city and are angry, the police force doesn't get very good grades there. So it really depends on your view of the convoy. If you think it's a good thing and you don't want them necessarily to leave, or you don't mind them being here for a few days, then you think the way the police have handled it has been okay because they haven't been aggressive. They haven't pushed them out of the city.
Okay, so as of Friday, it'll be 2 weeks. How, based on the polling that you've done here, how do residents want this dealt with?
Well, we see evidence that large majorities, and we didn't actually release this piece of it just because it was so long, but we asked people, should the city request, so this is an exclusive here, Rob, should the city request reinforcements to assist? 73% support the city calling in the OPP, 70% support the RCMP playing a bigger role, and even almost half think that at some point we probably need the Canadian forces, the military, to come in. And so I think, if this continues to go on, and, if the disruption continues and this sense of hopelessness happens, I think you're going to see more people say, what else can we do? And even half say, the Prime Minister and the Premier should sit down with the leaders of the convoy, even if many of them who oppose them sharply think if that's going to help clear the streets, then they might be open to doing that.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Thank you, David.
Always a pleasure.
Great to hear from you. David Coletto is the CEO of Abacus Data. 11:30, the news coming up, and then we're right back into some more public opinion research just out today from Leger. This is the Rob Snow Show, City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, February 8th. Good morning. I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa, it's -5, and in Smith Falls, -4. Here's what's making news this hour. Liberal MP Joel Lightbound has become the first federal Liberal to publicly disagree with Prime Minister Trudeau over COVID-19 policies. Although he agrees that protesters should leave downtown Ottawa, he also supported them and admitted they have legitimate concerns. He's calling on the government to review federal vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, and travel bans, saying people don't know where public health ends and politics begins. The provincial NDP is calling on the Premier to take action against the trucker occupation here in Ottawa. Leader Andrea Horwath says the Premier should actually take away their licenses operating certificate and their license to operate in Ontario as a way to end the protest. And Ontario's Housing Affordability Task Force has a report out today that recommends a goal of building 1.5 million homes in 10 years. The government-appointed task force says house prices in Ontario have nearly tripled in the last 10 years, far outpacing income growth, and a lack of supply is the key issue. Many of the 55 recommendations suggest ways to limit development being stifled by local opposition to housing projects. And it was another classic battle between the two women's hockey powerhouses at the Beijing Games. Canada got the better of the United States 4-2, and Renee Desbiens made 51 saves, Brianne Jenner scored twice, and captain Marie-Philippe Poulin converted a penalty shot. The Canadians ended the group stage with a perfect 4-0 record. City News Time, 11:34. I'm Danielle Bain, and for news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
11:35, Rob Snow Show. Home stretch. And it's the Sam LaPrade Show coming up this afternoon. We had David put together a sample this morning of some of the international coverage of the Freedom Convoy that has called Ottawa home for the last dozen days. Let's play that again. Very interesting. It's an international news story. Roll tape.
Dubbed the Freedom Convoy, the movement is being called an insurrection by some, paralyzing the Canadian capital.
The mayor of Ottawa, Canada, declaring a state of emergency as hundreds of trucks with the Freedom Convoy continue to block streets.
Anyone that stands for freedom, liberty instantly becomes the enemy, especially far-left, failed Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
State of emergency in place in Ottawa, where the police chief says COVID protests are a, quote, nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
In Canada, thousands of people have been protesting in the capital.
Canadian truckers are heroes. They are patriots, and they are marching for your freedom.
Clever and significant pushback in the Dominion of Canada with these truckers in Ottawa.
In the Dominion of Canada. It's the Hannity stuff. I told you yesterday that Sean Hannity has this huge audience on Fox News, of course, primetime Fox News, was going to do a big segment on this truckers convoy that's been in Ottawa. Do you have a little bit we just isolate this Sean Hannity stuff yesterday?
Stands for freedom, liberty instantly becomes the enemy, especially far-left, failed Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
State of emergency in place.
All right, so that's the Fox News opinion of the truckers convoy. Let's find out how Canadians feel about the truckers convoy, because there is new public opinion research out. It is from Leger, and Andrew Enns joins me now from Leger. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's really good. It's really good. I can't promise you it'll be as entertaining as that just was, but
that was good.
But nevertheless, we will be fair and balanced. Now, how do we feel? We look at this truckers convoy. It's been going on for 12 days. It's been all over the news. It's the biggest story in the country. What is the opinion of Canadians on the Freedom Convoy?
Well, I think it's in some parts that it may surprise a few people. Look, on one hand, there's still a good streak of peace, order, and good government running through the citizens of Canada. Over 60%, 62% are opposed to the Freedom Convoy situation in Ottawa, with a real significant number, 47% of Canadians are strongly opposed. So that's sort of, I think, to some degree in keeping with what we might expect. But I'd also say almost a third of Canadians, 32% in our survey, said that they supported the message and intentions of the Freedom Convoy protest in Ottawa. So that number, I'd be curious your reaction, Rob, but I find that maybe a little bit higher than what perhaps we might have expected.
Well, I find the number that's interesting is the percentage you say they strongly support it. They strongly support it. One third, it's total support, but it's only 17%, according to your data, would say they strongly support it.
Yeah, about half, and I think that's probably the sentiment of the majority of folks, maybe at these protests. And then there's the, I look at that balance of that 15% who somewhat support. I think that's really, really mixed views, but summed up with just being fed up, tired, and frustrated with this whole pandemic.
Yeah, I also think it may have something to do, Andrew, with the idea that, I support the idea behind that convoy, but the rogue elements and the reports of the harassment, bullying, and generally boorish behavior, I don't support that. And I wonder if that's why, say, 15% would say somewhat support, or whether that explains why almost half overall, 47%, say they strongly oppose it because of the elements that have been in the news so often over the last 12 days.
I think potentially there's some of that in there. I also think that 47%. I think you also there's a glimmer of what might go into that 47% in some of our agree-disagree statements, those attitudinal statements, where we had one about about that these protesters are being selfish, and in terms of the wait times and the pressures on our medical system. There's a real I think conflict within society in terms of, on one hand, we get the impact on our healthcare system and how the pandemic has really strained things, and it's forced a lot of canceled surgeries, etc. But on the other hand, there's also this feeling that, I just want to get done. I've followed all the rules, triple vaxxed. Why aren't we making more progress? And I think that's the real conflict that I think is going on out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also interesting as well when you look and you break it down. You can break it down, your data regionally. For example, I don't think it would be any surprise, for example, that the strongest support numbers come from Alberta and in Western Canada, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, but especially Alberta, the highest in the country. Whereas in the rest of Canada, it's pretty much even, when you look at, well, I support it or I'm against it. It's, it's kind of 60%, 60-30. Yeah, 60-30. Yeah. But when you dig into the demographics, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, am I reading here that it's the younger demographic where you see the most support for the convoy? Do I have that right?
That's correct.
That's correct. That's interesting.
That's correct. And it's interesting, though, again, to your point, Rob, that you made earlier, that the younger demographic, for almost 40% are in support of the Freedom Convoy protest, but that strongly support number actually doesn't change much. And I think, again, I go back to that frustration of some of the people who are supportive of the convoy, and that 18 to 34, we've seen that in our tracking throughout this pandemic. They're the generation, the age demographic that have chafed most under the restrictions and the lockdowns. We've seen it in terms of how some feel about their, how the disruption to their workplace may impact their career trajectory. We've seen their frustrations with not being able to see their friends on a regular basis or the way they like to. So I think you see that kind of manifest in that age group where they say, I'm with these guys. I'm just sort of tired of this whole thing.
Yeah, that some of the conservative, Pierre Poilievre, for example, is kind of, some would say, thrown his lot in with the Freedom Convoy. And correct, other conservative MPs have expressed support for the Freedom Convoy. I'm wondering if that's a winner among those who identify as conservative.
Well, certainly, in our polling, we actually looked at that we had a federal ballot in there, and certainly among those who are at in today supporting the Conservative Party of Canada, it is a bit of a winner. You've got 57% of conservative voters in the country support the Freedom Convoy. So, I mean, it's a majority. It's not, I would say, an overwhelming majority, but there's a majority there. Okay. And certainly compared to the other parties, I mean, only 13% of current Liberal voters support the Freedom Convoy versus 22% for the NDP, so much lower. So you do see that. And that's where you get the pressure, I think, on people like Mr. Poilievre or other MPs, that they probably do hear from some of their constituents out there that are agitating in support of the protest.
Okay. Now, finally, in addition to releasing some data today on the Freedom Convoy, you also did kind of an early look at the ballot to replace Aaron O'Toole as the leader of the Conservative Party. Pierre Poilievre leads. I find it interesting who's second. Who came in second?
Yeah, your premier, Doug Ford.
Yeah,
he ranked up there with 7% of selections. So. Yeah, it's interesting. I think he's probably a little preoccupied right now with other things on his mind. But maybe flattered nonetheless.
Yeah, but a huge undecided number. A lot of people have no idea right now, right? It's like almost 40% of people are.
Yeah, it's really I'll be the first to state that this kind of poll question in terms of who should lead the Conservative Party. I mean, it's sort of a bit of a finger in the wind of general public opinion. But as you know, the reality is it comes down to a membership question, and that can be quite a bit different than what the overall population thinks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrew Enns. Nice to hear from you. Break down the data.
Enjoyed the conversation. Happy to chat again if the opportunity arises.
Excellent. We'll keep your number. Andrew Enns from Leger Public Opinion Research there. Okay, coming up next, we'll take a look at the Ontario government's handling, such as it has been of the convoy, the Freedom Convoy. Standing by is the leader of the official opposition in the Ontario legislature. Andrea Horwath is going to join us next here on City News.
The past few years have taught us
So the birth of Absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. So I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been Absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's the been the big democratic sweep of in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is we went down to 2 employees from 25. And we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's little steps. So it's been tough. It's I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. We'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I think I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg. And you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Welcoming back to our program here on City News, Rob Snow Show. Andrea Horwath, Leader of the Opposition, the Ontario Legislature, Leader of Ontario's New Democrats. Andrea Horwath, good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
So you're joining the Liberals in calling for the province to declare a state of emergency.
Well, there's no doubt that Doug Ford seems to have been missing in action. So absolutely. I mean, if that can help us move resources more quickly to Ottawa, then that needs to happen. If we can get the government of Ontario, Doug Ford, to step up and say there are going to be consequences for these folks. For example, they have the power to take away their driver's licenses, their license plates, their commercial vehicle operating certificates, then they should be.
Yeah.
Doug Ford should be putting that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's some question. I mean, for example, our radio station's here in the south end of the city. If we weren't in tune with the news, we wouldn't even know this convoy was going on. So why would you need to declare a state of emergency that would affect, Sault Ste. Marie? Well, why? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, what we would be doing that for would be to try to get the government to act and to provide them with the ability to do so quickly. And I think that's the key. It's already been 12 days now,
yes.
and I get it that it's not the entire city of Ottawa, even never mind the entire province. But it just seems that this is dragged on for far too long. It's not a convoy anymore. It is now an occupation of our nation's capital, and I think people need to know that that's just not acceptable. And so, if there are things that we can do, up into and including a state of emergency, but also things like things that will actually have consequences for them, it would be, I think, a pretty clear message, a pretty clear message to these folks. If we say to them, if you're not prepared to clear out, then we're not prepared to license you in this province anymore.
Yeah. So in your news release this morning, it says Doug Ford has the power to take away the Commercial Vehicle Operator Certificate, CVOR, of any convoy protester that doesn't leave right now, and he should use it. So how does that work? How would that work?
Well, it's a matter of letting them know that if they don't clear out, that they're risking their driver's license. They're risking their ability to drive rig in Ontario, and they're risking their license plates. As I said, it seems like these folks think that they can just continue with impunity, and we need to show them that there are consequences to their actions. And one of the tools that needs to be explored is this option. I mean, they're hurting the people of Ottawa. The stories that are coming out of Ottawa are horrendous. These people are being, literally, the city's being held hostage, or at least that portion of the city, Centretown, is being held hostage by these folks.
Right. So this is a part of the Highway Traffic Act, is that right?
Absolutely. It is, yeah.
Okay, so that would be, but wouldn't that be a law enforcement issue? Isn't that a law enforcement? Do you want the Premier to be directing law enforcement? I thought that's kind of taboo stuff.
No, in fact, it's the registrar that has the ability to do that. The registrar has the ability to do that in terms of the act, and so it wouldn't be the policing. It would be, the deputy minister of highway safety, or of transportation safety rather, and that's something that's administrative. It's not law enforcement. It's an administrative penalty. It would be an administrative outcome, or I don't know, an administrative function that would have serious consequences. And I don't put it out there lightly. Obviously, it's pretty it's pretty heavy-handed. Yeah. But look at what they're doing. Look at what they've been doing for 12 days now.
Right, but what kind of look, we've been living it here, and I've heard the stories. We've interviewed the people directly affected by this. But I do wonder what kind of precedent you're setting, where you're saying if you participate in this protest, we are going to pull your license. For example, I'm just spitballing here.
No, I get
if I'm a hairdresser or a plumber or an electrician, I'm down there in quote unquote solidarity with the Freedom Convoy. What kind of precedent are you going to pull my business license if I'm a hairdresser for my hair salon, or for my my electricity shop, or my electrician shop, or what?
I get your point, but not at all. I mean, part of what's happened here is that these folks have taken their vehicles and are using them in a siege on Ottawa. I mean, they're using them as part of an occupation of our capital city, and so this is specifically tied to the use of those vehicles to create chaos in Ottawa. That's where the relation is. It's between folks who are using their profession and their vehicles to create that chaos. Look, yes, it's unprecedented, but what's happening in Ottawa is pretty unprecedented as well. It's gone completely out of control. It's taking far too long to address, and so unprecedented times require unprecedented solutions.
Okay. Well, what do you think about, because everybody's throwing out ideas here, the Liberal leader, Mr. Del Duca, has said we should have property seizures. Seize the vehicles, if that's possible. Seize those trucks, go in and seize them. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think if it was that easy, it would have been done already. It seems to me that there's a part of the challenge is that there's no capacity to actually physically do that. But I don't fault anyone for putting ideas on the table. I think that there's definitely action that needs to be taken here, and putting ideas out there helps us to figure out what might in fact work, and that's why we didn't go with the seizing of vehicles. Why we decided that the better way is something that actually has a long-term impact. I mean, if you're earning a living with your vehicle license, then maybe you'll think twice about whether to stay parked on the roadways in Ottawa if that's at risk.
Okay, let me ask you about something else. The PCs are floating out there. Save $120 on a license plate renewal, never need a sticker again. What do you think of that?
Well, I have to have a look at what exactly the fine print of their idea is. I can tell you there's no doubt that people in Ontario need a break. I mean, the cost of everything is going through the roof. But I know that the Premier has a child care deal that he could be signing that would help relieve the pressure on families. There's all kinds of issues around the affordability of housing and rents that could help families. $120, okay, maybe, but there's a lot more that needs to be done to help people afford to build a decent life in this province.
All right. Thank you, Andrea Horwath.
Thank you.
Nice to hear from you as always. Andrea Horwath, the leader of Ontario's New Democrats. That's it for the Rob Snow Show. Back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Sam LaPrade after the news on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays 9 to noon on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit